Coming up on this episode of Up for Debate, we continue our in-depth dive into America's favorite defunct sports league, the XFL. Tonight, the rest of the season. We've done week 1 and week 2. Now we're going to continue week 3 all the way through the $1 million game. Crazy locker room shenanigans, aggressive interviews, confrontations with the governor of Minnesota. It's a wacky one. Stick around. Up for Debate starts right now. This is Up for Debate presents The X Stands for Nothing, the unbelievably true story of the XFL. Tonight, episode number 131, recorded December 5th, 2018. Chapter 5, Rock Bottom. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the debate show that can and will talk about anything, including the XFL. I am Sean Jennings, joined as always by our own guy.
Coach.
I think we've used that one. This is why we don't do 6-part series, because I run out of jokes very quickly.
Just call me the coach. I'm in. Put me in, coach. Can I put myself in if I'm the coach?
I would say a man who has more fans on this show than the XFL had in reality. It's Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
Yeah, that's. I think that's probably right.
That's
probably
about accurate.
Yeah, it's about right. He still hate me.
Still, so the hate watch continues. Last week he hated you. Does he still hate you?
He still hate me.
He still hate me.
Do you think, coincidentally, when XFL reignites in 2020, do you think that will there be an overt reference to he hate me on a player's uniform? Like, will it say, like, he still hate me, or he hate me again, or something like that, or maybe she hate me? What do you think? Well, first of all, will they allow nicknames on jerseys?
That's my question. Of all the things in the XFL to bring back, that I feel like that would other than he hate me, never really went anywhere. And was kind of
they have some
lame.
Good ones. If you look at
Death Blow and
right, Death Blow is another good one. It's probably the second best known.
Yeah, it was a weird part of the XFL experiment. Yeah, I think he hate me as part of it. I think what they have to do is bring on Rod Smart in some capacity, maybe as a commentator or a sideline reporter or like an assistant coach, and bring it in. That the original he hate me's got to be there.
Oh, if he's still alive, I'll guarantee he will absolutely be then he'll absolutely be featured in some kind of capacity, probably in the first game, I would say.
Maybe like I don't know if they're going to bring the scramble back, but maybe he can do the coin toss if they do that.
Yeah. And again, I mean, we'll talk more about what we envision the XFL will look like in a later episode, but maybe he'll do the guest, like a guest announcing or something like that. He's got to be too old to play, right? He's not going to come back as a player.
No.
So I figured his time
like
is kind of past.
Running back coach or something,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Bring him into the family. Now, man, as I mentioned up at the top, if you're just joining us on this episode for Up for Debate, too bad. We're already on Chapter 5. You missed 4 chapters of XFL excellence. So go back, listen to those at upfordebate.tv or wherever you get your podcasts. Get caught up. Matt, we spent an hour last week talking about a single game, week 2 of the XFL, where everything that could go wrong did. We had power outages. We had Jennifer Lopez. We had broken legs. We had Dick Ebersol. We had Lauren Michaels. It was a disaster. A disaster for the league. The ratings way down from week 1, dropped from about a 9 to about a 4.5. And the XFL, Matt, really stumbling into week 3.
Yep. We kind of crossed the threshold in last week's episode, a point of no return for the XFL. We kind of left with a cliffhanger with will the XFL recover from this point on? And you kind of see this like steady downward slope starting to happen, and it all really starts with that power outage, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of the beginning of the end.
Yeah, well, XFL had a big chance in week 1 to get a lot of viewers and failed, and in week 2 they had a chance to keep at least the viewers they had and failed. So entering week 3, they're grasping at straws here, and we've got 10. What is this? We got 7 weeks of the XFL plus the playoffs and the championship to get through tonight, Matt. So we're gonna kind of go through these and kind of highlight interesting or important events that happened starting in week 3. A snoozer of a game, Saturday, February 17th, 2001. The Los Angeles Extreme beat the Las Vegas Outlaws in a 12-9 low-scoring game. Week 3 ratings, a 3.1. That's a 67% drop from week 1. So the ratings continue to slide in week 3. And the big concern, Matt, for the league after week 4, it's March. And the problem with March Madness starts, okay? Really, in February, the NFL's done. Basketball is around, but nobody really cares about basketball in the post-Jordan era at this time. And this is kind of pre-Lakers get exciting. And baseball hasn't started, and no one cares about hockey. So really not a lot of competition. But as soon as March gets here, boom, you're competing with March Madness. Huge television ratings there. So the XFL really, if they get to March and haven't established their foothold, they're in trouble. And coming out of week 3, they have issues. In fact, Honda dropped them as a sponsor following week 3. The first major sponsor to drop out. Other sponsors followed because of the declining ratings. Falling beneath that 4.5, they guaranteed advertisers. In fact, Vince McMahon even discussed blowing up a Honda Accord at halftime in order to get back at Honda. Sadly, very sadly, never happened.
Yeah. This is such a total Vince McMahon response, by the way, to this controversy. So you got to wonder, will something like this happen in 2020's XFL?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to think about that if you're a sponsor, right? You have to deal with Mr. McMahon.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a creatively vengeful dude.
Oh, no doubt.
We see that all the time. If you're a wrestling fan, comes up with lots of creative ways to get back at his the heels in that series. Or I guess he is one of the heels, so I guess he's getting back
he's a character in
at
his
the baby
own show.
faces. Yeah, and the people that are the tweeners and the people that are basically his nemesis.
Now,
tries
Matt,
to get back at him.
It's interesting around this time that Dick Ebersol and Vince McMahon, the men behind the XFL, decide to call a focus group of XFL fans to figure out what they want. And at this point, I think both men acknowledge the league isn't working. It's just not. And so they need to tweak and adjust if they have any shot of saving this already on life support football league. And interestingly enough, the focus group said, and I'm reading from Long Bomb by Brett Forster, the book we've kind of been using for research throughout this entire series. McMahon called on the focus groups, which told him several things. One, fans were lukewarm on Governor Ventura, who was doing commentating. And those who were still open to watching the XFL were looking for straight football without all the gimmicks. But Ebersol, swinging for the fences, still believed in blowing up the football model. The two men agreed on one change for week 4, that they were going to manufacture some drama and go more towards entertainment instead of football. Matt, what do you think of that decision by Ebersol and McMahon?
This seems like more of a reactive rather than proactive decision, first and foremost. But I think you gotta wonder in this situation, is this going to be enough? Is this going to be enough to turn things around? I don't know. How about you? What do you think about it?
I mean, the XFL can kind of be set up as a series of bad decisions. I would argue maybe about 20 to 30% of the decisions they made were good. And we'll certainly highlight some of those as we wrap up this series. But I think if you had any shot of saving this, why would you call a focus group and then explicitly do the opposite of what they're saying? To me, it's hubris. It's pure hubris and ego at this point, saying they're telling us they just want regular football. They want straight football, good commentators, the players on the field, but the focus group's wrong. I know I'm right. Focus group's wrong. No, we're just going to do more wrestling shit, which was exactly what they didn't want, which is bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. Why? Why do you think that would even work? It's just such hubris from these guys.
Yeah. A sidebar. I wonder if there's a book out there that like talks about focus groups and like their impact on various companies' decisions. I don't know. If you're out there listening and you know of such a book, try to point either Sean or myself in that direction. At least I'd like to read it. I'd like to. That sounds like that sounds like a neat topic for a book, doesn't it? Like certain. It could be like a case study in focus groups and like how they've helped make decisions. I'm sure there's some kind of literature out there about that.
I will just say,
and this would be this has got to be one of the if that book exists, this decision's got to be in it. I would say this situation.
I think one example that comes to my mind just immediately is famously Coca-Cola, when researching new Coke, convened a lot of focus groups that said we like the new taste better. We prefer it. That's what really led them. They had one of the most successful market tests ever with new Coke in terms of the ratings and the scores from the focus group. And then they rolled it out and we know what happened. Actually, there's a great book on new Coke. Maybe we'll do it on the show at some point. And that whole experiment and rollout and backlash. But that was really heavily driven by focus groups. So they certainly can have a big impact on the directions businesses take, both good and bad. And clearly at this stage, you can't even really give them credit because they gave their feedback and the XFL didn't listen. And they didn't listen.
Yeah.
So as we head into week 4, February 24th, we're seeing the 0-3 New York, New Jersey Hitmen against the 0-3 Chicago Enforcers in a cold and rainy Chicago. A game guaranteed to be a snoozer. So what does the XFL do, Matt? They amp up the drama by getting two of the greatest entertainment minds to fight each other. That's right, I'm talking about fan favorite of the show, New York, New Jersey Hitmen coach Rusty Tillman against the then governor of the state of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura. A battle for the ages, Matt.
This might have been my favorite part because of the whole thing. Just because, so here's a guy, right? The coach of the Hitmen, Tillman. Here's a guy who really genuinely just wants to win football games. You know, he's a football coach. He's a football guy. He doesn't want anything to do with any of this wrestling nonsense, as he calls it. He just wants to win football games. And that's all he cares about. And here's Jesse the Body Ventura in the announcer's booth. Like, just starts picking on him like a typical school bully. Just starts like verbally harassing him, calling him weak, calling him an incompetent coach. What does he say? He's at a halftime. Look, there he is. Instead of coaching, instead of being like a leader, he's like limp-wristed, weak.
Yeah, he said.
What did he call him?
Quote. He said, "Rusty has issues with everybody. He's obviously an unhappy man. He had a bad childhood."
Oh, that's right. Yes, he had a bad childhood.
And then it said, "That Rusty's a smart guy. If anybody's capable of blowing a 10-0 lead with 7:50 to go in the game, it's Rusty Tillman. He's not winning because he's a good coach. He's winning because he's lucky."
Yes. Just totally decides. He just. I wonder.
Oh, this was planned.
Wonder is this something? Well, I wonder if it was something that just clicked in Ventura's head. Like, let me go out and harass this guy. Let's see if I can provoke him. Let's see if I can get something out of him, which would be good for television. Or if it was like some kind of backstage conversation. Look, what I want you to do is I want you to choose one of these coaches in this game, and I want you to pick a fight with them. Because that's eventually what happens. I mean, he goes from outright mocking him on over the TV feed to actually, after the game is over, approaching him on the field, like kind of following him around and provoking him that way.
This had to come from McMahon. I mean, Jesse can certainly, Governor Ventura can certainly, get a confrontation going, but this was all McMahon directed. And we talked about this on, I think, one of the first 2 episodes of the series. Tillman was marked from day one as being the outspoken coach among the group. And I think it just made sense. His team was on an 0-3 losing streak. He just seemed like a good guy to pick on and try and get some reaction out of, considering most of these coaches were really boring football coaches. So it's not like Jesse had a lot of options as to who he was going to pick on.
It's not like they had It's not like they had some kind of inside man.
No.
There wasn't one of the coaches that was like also a wrestling plant or something.
Yep.
I think that's what they probably wanted.
Sure. Well, that was
and
part
they
of
probably wanted that among the players too. I think they wanted everyone to be in on it, and that was a huge part of the XFL's failure was that not enough people were in on it. You know.
Yeah,
and that
including Rusty Tillman. Now, Matt, I'm going to just read a little piece here from Long Bomb because, as you put, it's one of the best parts of the book. But the clock came to its final fading digits, and Ventura reached for his crowning statement, something that would keep everyone from dozing off. Mind you, again, this was a 12-0 game. He announced that he was going to hike down through the stands at the end of the game. He was going to interview Rusty Tillman. He made a big show of unplugging himself from the broadcast booth, then walked through the empty seats towards the field. Jesse made it to the field as the final whistle blew. Tillman and the Hitmen had won their first game. They just wanted to get out of the rain and on a plane back to New York. The coach jogged towards the locker room. Ventura followed in hot pursuit. He caught him at midfield, with the Bubba Cam at the governor's elbow. "Rusty," Ventura boomed into his microphone, trying to keep pace. "Ain't you gonna talk to me?" Tillman jogged on in silence, maintaining his composure. Finally, he couldn't resist the microphone. "I don't want to talk to you." Tillman quickened his pace, blowing them off. This left Jesse Ventura standing in the middle of an empty field, microphone dangling at the end of his arm like a useless appendage. He looked like a wrestler in the ring, playing to a depleted crowd, which obliged him by chanting, "Asshole," in the fading direction of Tillman. "I got him intimidated," Ventura hollered into his microphone. "He couldn't wait to get off the field. He's afraid of me." As Tillman jogged towards the locker room, he shook his head at what has happened. Quote, "The truth is, I would have loved to have given him a shot right there on the field," he would later say. 20 years ago, I probably would have. I didn't want to come off as Curly, Moe, and Larry. If anybody was going to be a stooge, it was going to be him."
Isn't that just a typical coach response right there? The
well,
pulling out the Three Stooges analogy.
He's an older guy. Hey, and Matt, you made a great point of this, which is what most people I don't think realize is these coaches never wanted to coach in the XFL. They wanted to coach in the NFL, and they saw this as an audition to eventually get that job. This was only supposed to be a stepping stone. And you can't go punching the governor of Minnesota and expect to get hired in the NFL. So Rusty Tillman was never going to play ball. Why did my lights all just turn off?
Yeah.
Although I kind of like this. This looks cool. This looks neat. I might just do literally all the lights in my house.
Are you having a power outage right now?
No, I'm not. It's the smart lights.
Oh.
They're not very smart. But anyway, all right, let's keep going. Let's not get distracted.
Yeah, this is like the
Oh no, I didn't put gas in the generator.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
So,
do we have a simultaneous podcast?
Jennifer Lopez is going to be so pissed.
We're going to go to the backup podcast while we get the power up here.
The backup podcast with John and Mike.
Yes. Down for arguments.
Down.
Check it out. There we go. Okay.
And he's back. We're back.
Can't guarantee that won't happen again. So, Matt, yes. So we have this hilariously awkward, very XFL, very WWE confrontation. Jesse Ventura and Rusty Tillman. Tillman doesn't take the bait, but Ventura gets a big smile on his face. And Matt, Game 4, the XFL, a new ratings low, 2.6. A decrease over the week before. And even as we roll into Week 5, the first game in March, which saw the Los Angeles Extreme blow out the Hitmen, a rating of 2.4.
Yep. This is obviously not going so well for Mr. McMahon.
Nope, the ratings continue to
Mr.
slide.
McMahon and friends, yeah.
And they don't know what to do. They literally don't know what to do at this point, Matt. They're grasping for straws, and they come up with the most brilliant marketing ploy in the history of sports. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
That's right, Matt. The XFL is going to go where no other league would dare to take you.
Oh, that's right. They're trying to. This is the moment that they kind of channel that creepiness from game one into like a full-fledged. It's like it went from like, oh, did they just say that, to, oh my God, they're actually going to do this.
That's right. They peppered the airwaves with ads saying the XFL was going to go into the Orlando Rage cheerleaders locker room at the halftime, and nothing was off limits.
I wonder if when people saw this for the first time, if they actually thought, if they like did it cross their minds that like where they're like the network is going to totally let them do this. This is like you know, if Vince McMahon says it, it must be true. I mean, even back then they had to know there's some limits. Like there are some things that primetime television just can't deliver on, right?
I just it absolutely baffles me that NBC would let this happen. Vince McMahon wanting to do it, not a surprise at all. I mean, this is regular occurrence on Monday Night Raw. For NBC to put this on in prime time during a sporting event is staggering to me.
Can you imagine this in today's era, like the Me Too movement and the age that we are in right now in 2018, almost 2019, having like this be a huge feature? It really does like kind of set up a like a noticeable difference between the early 2000s and today.
Oh God,
in
very
terms of the culture,
time.
You know,
very of the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. This is like a textbook, kind of like a textbook picture, like a.
The XFL as a whole, right?
As a whole, right?
That's
what I mean.
Where they hired a local strip club, sent over a few women, and had them in hot tubs at the end zone during a game. Yeah. You know, I mean, this is a league that took sex and it took violence to a higher degree, and that's what WWE was doing on the air at that time. And
honestly, I think finding out what 2020's XFL is going to look like, I mean, that's really what is it. I want it to. Quite frankly, I want it to be 2020 right now. I just want to know what is it. What can it possibly look like that still mirrors the XFL of 2001?
Well, we're going to go deep on it next week, Matt, but it is interesting to see how wrestling has changed since 2000 and 2001. I mean, so much less of the acting and the performance and the overcomplicated storylines, the sexy angles to it. And now it's much more about the physicality. It's much more about the actual in-the-ring content versus everything surrounding it, which is so different. How that will affect the XFL, it's going to be interesting to see. You're not wrong. Matt, I'm going to read just another very short bit from Longbaum about this locker room stunt. Matt Viscursion welcomed the TV audience to Orlando by running down the matchup between the league's best defense and the only undefeated team. Then the reinstated host happily hoisted the company line, quote, "While those of you who might have thought we sold out a few weeks ago and hit rock bottom were wrong," he grinned into the camera. "To help us get there completely, let's check in with Fred Roggin." They go down to the field with Roggin surrounded by cheerleaders who says, quote, "Some have called it an unprecedented television event. Others have called it a desperate ploy to increase sagging ratings. In any event, the XFL founder, chairman, and noted racketeer Vince McMahon has ordered a camera into the locker room of the Orlando cheerleaders at halftime to capture the essence of whatever it is they do." He then goes to the cheerleader next to him. "Bev, how do you feel about a camera being in your locker room?" "I think it's great," said Bev. "They bring cameras into the players' locker room. It's time they brought them into the cheerleaders' locker room. We get in there, we just get comfortable, and we want to take off some..." She's interrupted. "Don't tell them about that." An anxious nation awaits. And Matt, do you want to tell the people what how the stunt unfolded?
Sure.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah. All right. So, we start out in the beginning of the game, having been told for weeks now that, or for days upcoming, to this game, that we're going to be venturing inside of the cheerleaders' locker room. What was it? The Miami
Orlando Rage.
the Orlando Rage cheerleaders' locker room. We get to the moment. It's going to happen at halftime. We're told. It's halftime, and all right. So I'm playing this from memory as best I can, but feel free to jump in immediately if I forget any of the key details, because they're all so good. All right, so cut to surprisingly, we think that it's gonna all right. So Vince McMahon is I'm picturing him. He's got cheerleaders all around him, and he's saying, "We're gonna go into your locker room. We're gonna go where, and you're gonna let us into your locker room," or something like that. And this guy is gonna be the one to do it. He points to one of the cameramen, right?
Bruno, the cameraman.
Bruno, say hi to Bruno, girls.
Hi, Bruno.
So, all right, that's at the beginning of the game, right?
Yep.
All right. Halftime rolls around, clock gets to 0. Smash cut to Vince McMahon standing outside the door to the girls' cheerleaders' locker room, locker room, with Bruno, the cameraman, same one from before. He says to Bruno, "All right, I need you to get in there and get some really good footage. Everybody's got to see the foot." So what we're being shown here is kind of like we're not supposed to be watching this.
Right.
It's like a behind the scenes video of Vince McMahon telling the cameraman to go into the locker room. So Bruno diligently nods his head, and Bruno is just like kind of this generic bald guy. Nods his head. He's got like a hockey mask or something on, right?
Yeah, so he had a helmet because all of the cameramen on the field wore helmets and pads in case they got accidentally tackled. I mean, they were right up there with the players. So he was in a standard garb, but Vince McMahon says to him, "Dude, you look like crap. You look awful. Here, take your helmet off, wipe the sweat off. Just get you got to. I mean, these are beautiful ladies in there." He says. He said, "You got to be ready to talk to them. You have a rare opportunity here. You got to show us what really goes on in there. The people out there want to see." And he's really hyping them up, and he gives him a glass of water. He says, "Get," and he finally says, "All right, Bruno, are you ready? Get in there." And he pushes him with all of his might into the closed doors of the locker room so hard that he fake wrestling style slams his head off of the door and knocks himself unconscious. Boom. Oh, I'm playing the video. You got to watch this episode on YouTube because I have the video playing.
It's worth watching.
And he's unconscious on the ground, and Vince McMahon is yelling at him, Bruno, wake up. You're ruining this stunt for everybody. Wake up. He's slapping him on the ground. Wake up. All of a sudden,
it's a dream sequence.
Pre-taped dream sequence, everybody. Oh, no. Vince McMahon has struck again.
So, and in the pre-taped dream sequence, it's everything you could probably imagine, your wildest dreams. It's like it cuts to like the cheerleaders everyone's of course fully clothed, very PG.
Yep.
But they're like hanging out in the hot tub and throwing the football around and.
Yeah, Bruno's there covered with kisses all over his face. They're playing Twister with a man in a gorilla suit. And this is where things, because that's what's funny, is it's not just a regular sequence. It gets crazy. The cheerleaders are there. They're like rubbing soap and scrubbing down a man wearing a jersey that says "She Love Me" on it.
That's right.
Which is really great.
She loved me. Yeah.
They cut to two women in like a study. They're holding baby pigs. And there's like an oinking sound in the background, and then their feet are resting on two men wearing dog masks, which is very weird and creepy. Like, this is out of a horror movie.
So this is kind of like, it's kind of endearing at first. Yeah, you're right, but it has like almost like a Kubrick vibe to it.
Yes,
it's like that, like in The Shining. You know what I'm talking about?
I've never seen that, but I get the gist of where you're going.
It's got like these elements that just seem out of place. And you feel like there's more meaning behind it, like you said, the dog masks and the gorilla suit and the
Now,
the
let me
Twister.
ask you,
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think the meaning is behind the dominatrix woman
Right.
talking aggressively to the man in the bunny suit wearing sunglasses?
Well,
What do you think
Sean,
that means?
I think that it was a metaphor for the economy at the time. I think the cheerleader was clearly supposed to be Bill Gates,
Oh, sure.
and I would say that it was a very thinly veiled metaphor for the Iraq War. So, well,
Interesting,
that would
which
have
hadn't
been
happened yet. Yeah,
that would have been
it was
2
a
years
precursor.
in the future. 2 years in the future. Vince McMahon was a visionary. He was a visionary, so
Ahead of his time.
he's prescient. So that was probably something to do with the 2000 election too.
Yes, it was all about hanging chads.
Yes, indeed.
Now,
The Twister was all just a giant metaphor for our political system as a whole.
yeah, that's why it was so smart. As Matt, we see the cheerleaders, they're playing poker with the devil, and finally we cut to the showers, and we see sort of the silhouette of the naked ladies against the glass. The glass door opens, and who walks out? Finally!
Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield shows. What? Huh? Try that
Rodney
again.
Dangerfield walks out with a bath towel wrapped around his waist, and he makes some kind of joke about I play football, but I still get no respect. It's like not even a real joke. It's just he might as well have just said, "I'm Rodney Dangerfield." Like
now, mind you, this isn't 1987. Okay, this is 2001. Rodney Dangerfield has been out of the public consciousness for well over a decade.
Yeah. That's when I read the book, is it a different Rodney Dangerfield? And then I watched the actual clip on YouTube, and sure enough, it is famed comedian who he was alive at that time was Rodney Dangerfield. I thought I'll be completely honest with you, Sean. I thought he had died long ago. I didn't even know he was alive in the early 2000s, but it must have been like very close to the year that he passed, right?
I don't actually know, but we have the power of the internet to tell me exactly what year he passed away, and Google tells me the answer to that is 2004.
Okay, so
not too
kind of
much
close
longer
to it
after that. Yeah.
So yeah, he makes that joke about how he plays football, still gets no respect, and then sure enough is when our hero Bruno wakes up. And he comes to.
Surrounded by the cheerleaders. Asking him to wait. Bruno, wake up. Bruno.
Out of his daze.
Yeah. And then Vince McMahon says, ladies, let me take care of this. The ladies leave. And then he proceeds to just kick Bruno to wake him up.
Yeah, just kicking him over and over again.
Throws water all over him. Wake up, slaps him. Beats his ass. It's very wrestling.
Do you think they plan to do more of these? Like, was this going to be a routine thing?
If this had been successful, we would have seen a shit ton of this. Oh my God, every commercial break would have been this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't really have a problem with it. I think this might be a part where we differ, but I think that is exactly the angle that McMahon always wanted from the beginning.
Sure,
the kayfabe, the storyline. He wanted the storyline. Yep. Like he wanted to script the unscriptable, a live sporting event, a football nonetheless, and he wanted to have characters. He wanted there to be heroes and villains and twists and turns, and he wanted it. Of course, the most important thing, he wanted to inject himself into it, which he did. You saw all of that in this little 5-6 minute clip, not even like 4-minute clip. So, yeah, I recommend watching it. It's hilarious. It's great.
I mean, I'll say, Matt, I do partially agree with you. I think definitely that Vince wanted more of this. I think the biggest problem football has going against it for this type of angle is that over an hour of Monday Night is Raw on cable, you can craft a storyline because the matches aren't particularly long, and you can do several segments of this in a single hour, right? I think a football game really doesn't lend itself to this because you do this bit and then you cut back to a whole quarter of comparatively boring football, right? What storyline can you possibly craft over the length of a football game? It's just the format doesn't lend itself to that.
I mean, the game itself is supposed to be the narrative.
Right. And you can and the XFL did a lot of this, especially later on in the season. A lot of those like pre-taped player background bio stories of, oh, he grew up in this neighborhood and went through this. And they did a ton of that trying to craft storylines. At least to me, that makes a little more sense than this kind of fictionalized stuff, because the fictionalized stuff, A, you have to pay close attention to because it's all made up, and B, it usually tends, it didn't in this case, but in the WWE, it crosses multiple weeks. I mean, these are long-term storylines. You can't do that in football because there's no guarantee people are going to be tuned in for the whole game, never mind multiple games. I get the idea. It's just such a difficult thing to execute, and putting this on primetime on NBC, that sucked.
Huh. I just think the people weren't ready for it, and this kind of storyline, if you're going to lead with this one, the creepy one about trying to get into the cheerleaders' locker room, I mean, this is not the one.
No,
this is not the one. You know, like lead with a better one. I mean, I get it. Like you're obviously pandering to your demographic here, which was, you know, adolescent boys and guys without jobs, I guess. But yeah, I mean, talk about like skeevy.
Yeah. It's not good, Matt. The ratings reflected it. 2.4 after Game 6. And that same week, the WWF stock hit an all-time low. Things not looking great.
Yeah. Dire situation.
It sure is, leading into Week 7, of which they have a game, more football. And Week 7's ratings, Matt, a 1.6. That ties the lowest primetime sports event ever in the history of television.
Which was what?
You got me. I believe it was a Stanley Cup game.
I think you're right. I for some reason I do remember. It was just a very. It was around the. Was it a game that was around like near the blackout, or not the blackout, the lockout?
Yeah, 2003. No, I'd have to. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but it was like a 1.6. I think the previous sporting event was it was over a 2, so it beat it by a lot.
Was it part of the Olympics? Maybe.
No.
That was the lowest.
Yeah, I would have to. I'd have to snoop around here and try and find the answer to that here in the book. I should have written it down, and I did not. That's a shame on me.
No worries.
But if I find it, I promise I will report back.
I mean, at this time, it looks like the X in XFL is starting to stand for extremely bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to stand for just execute it already.
Yeah.
You put it out of its misery, because it's falling apart.
Yeah, hit it with X-rays.
There we go. The 1.6... this was during the second round of the NCAA tournament. The Nielsen Media Research had to actually comb through its archives all the way back to the 1950s to find the answer. It actually was the second lowest rated TV show ever of all time, beating an August 30th, 1997 NBC News special about the drug policy, which aired Saturday night and also rated a 1.6. Only one other show had scored lower, an old Fox sitcom called Mr. President, which aired in February of 1988 and earned a 1.5. So
wow. Okay, there you go.
So bad news. But the season rolls on, Matt. I mean, you can't stop there.
Mm-hmm.
The season continues on. Week 8, Week 9. It was right around Week 9 the XFL ratings actually did tie for the lowest ever in television history, hitting a 1.5 in Week 9. It was at that point Ebersol, for the first time, admitted publicly that it was pretty unlikely a second season was going to happen, though McMahon held out hope of the league coming back, believing they could eventually right the ship. And Matt, that takes us into the XFL playoffs.
Yeah. Days turn to weeks turn to months, and then here we are. We've reached
April.
the playoffs.
Yep.
But you can't say, for all it was worth, you can't say that this season was without drama. Without some, at least, like, maybe not the kind that the XFL wanted or anticipated, but definitely not without its dramatic moments. I mean, they were able to fill pages, and write entire books about the narrative of the XFL.
I mean, they played 40 games.
Documentaries. Yeah.
The football did happen. Whether or not people watched it is one thing, but the league happened. There are players and coaches and teams and stats, and the league happened. That's you certainly can't debate that.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, Matt, we roll into the playoffs with it's just a 4-team playoff format with a semifinals and then obviously the championship game. We had the San Francisco Demons versus the Orlando Rage, and we had the Los Angeles Extreme versus the Chicago Enforcers for the rights to get to the playoffs. The two best teams in the league, the Los Angeles Extreme and the San Francisco Demons at this point, strong offense versus a strong defense. Ultimately, the San Francisco Demons beat out the Rage 26-25, and the Extreme beat the Enforcers 33-16 to advance to the XFL $1 Million Championship game.
Yeah. Very typical of the XFL. This championship game, Sean, was did they ever bother to pick a name for it?
Well, they debated for a long time, Matt. They did. They pitched around a few different names, calling it the Big Game and so just XFL Championship. But they ultimately came down to $1 Million Game, and the reason for that is because we've talked about previously on the show, the gimmick paid to play, paid more to win. The players were paid per game and were paid a bonus to win games. They wanted to continue that on through the championship game, and so the gimmick was that the winning team would split a $1 million prize pool that would be split amongst the players. That's roughly $25,000 per player, or about half a year's salary in the XFL. Interestingly enough, the book made this comparison. I didn't originally, but in 2001, right around this time, it was the rise of Survivor and their $1 million prize. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and their $1 million prize. $1 million was a really hot number at this time, and so I think the XFL wanted a piece of that, and so put $1 million right on the title of the championship game.
Yeah, it's an interesting insight. 1 million was that was definitely the sexy number back then. So they start calling it the $1 Million Game.
The $1 Million Game. Nice ring to it.
Mm-hmm. So I think they toyed with the idea of calling it the Mega Bowl, didn't they? If I'm not mistaken, it was going to be like the Mega Bowl or the Million Bowl or something like that.
Yep.
And then in the end, they just it's the $1 Million Game.
It's the $1 Million Game, April 21st, 2001.
You also have to remember that they're also playing off the fact that many of these players are making barely ends meet with the salaries they're being paid out.
Sure,
$1 million was a lot for these players. Millions was a lot. Very what was the average salary for the XFL players at the time?
About $50,000 a year. I mean, it wasn't
$50,000, something like that. Nothing too, not it's not NFL money.
No, God, no.
NFL money.
No.
Not anywhere close. So, if we were to find out that the Super Bowl champion payout, for example, was $1 million, we would be okay. Well, they already have a lot of money. Now they have even more money. Maybe they'll buy like a third Lamborghini or something like that.
Sure.
But for these guys, it's like, rags to riches kind of thing. So the $1 Million Game really does mean a lot.
Although, again,
one of them.
It is classic Vince McMahon, though, to advertise it as $1 million game, but not specify that it's $1 million split between the team.
Yeah.
They didn't each get $1 million, but nonetheless, you're right. It is nice. That's a nice bonus to go out and win that game. It took place in Los Angeles at the Coliseum. Los Angeles Extreme versus the San Francisco Demons, the two best teams in the league. Interestingly enough, both from the same division, played played each other several times before. Ironically enough, Matt, this is interesting. We talked last week about delaying Jennifer Lopez and the game running over. Interestingly enough, the $1 million game itself was delayed because the NBA championships the playoffs were happening in the afternoon that Saturday and ran long and actually delayed the start of the $1 million game.
Aha, a little taste of the old medicine.
Yes, a little comeuppance for the XFL, as if they didn't have enough of that already.
Right.
Matt, this game sucked.
Oh, I mean, this game was awful.
For XFL, it sucked, and that's saying a lot.
This was what we would call a snoozer of a game.
It was extremely dull. In fact, it was so dull that San Francisco didn't score until the tip end of the fourth quarter. In fact, the Los Angeles Extreme didn't have to punt the ball until the third quarter. They ended up putting up 38 points to San Francisco's 6, and your XFL 2001 $1 million championship game winners, and by the way, still reigning champions, the Los Angeles Extreme.
Yeah, that's got to be the longest held title, clinched title. Although, was there a championship winner for the USFL?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they might be,
and
they might have
they remain the reigning champions as well.
Yeah. This $1 million game turned out to be, incredibly underwhelming. The game prior to that between San Francisco and Los Angeles, was it Orlando and San Francisco? Was that the one that was really exciting? It was tight. That was it. Orlando versus San Francisco, much more exciting. Came down to 1 point. Came down to one play at the very end, featuring our hero. He hate me, Rod Smart, just barely missing a game-winning touchdown by a matter of inches, really, really inches. And a lot of people see this game as a metaphor for the XFL, like it's like kind of like a microcosm. This one game is a microcosm of the entire XFL experience, just in one game. You had the tawdry cheerleaders in the corner of the field. You had a incredibly underwhelming, low caliber experience on the field. Yep. One team just blowing out the other. The other just didn't even show up. But you also had, Sean, a basically microscopic crowd presence
for a championship game.
It was basically the equivalent of like a low rent college game or really a glorified high school game.
Which in the Los Angeles Coliseum, I mean, I think the max seating capacity there is 90,000. I mean, it's the Los Angeles Rams playing there now. The crowds look small in that stadium. So to have that few number of people, I think I actually have the attendance number here. 24,153 was the listed attendance, but I doubt it was probably much smaller than that. They do those numbers based on ticket sales, not on people who actually attend.
Right. So this had to be the moment when Vince McMahon finally comes to terms.
It wasn't.
No, really.
That's what's crazy
this is
about
not the moment.
Dick Ebersol knew it was over actually long before this.
Yeah.
Vince still has not given up hope.
Surely, Sean, he looked out on that dwindling crowd.
Nope.
This ragtag, diminished group of diehard fans. It's
nope.
just and just
you
thought,
know what he saw?
My empire has crumbled.
He saw diehard fans, and he said, "You know what? This was." Now you have to remember, Matt. We talked about this very early on. The XFL deal with NBC, the 50-50 partnership, was a 2-year deal. It was always meant to be 2 years, and they knew that there was the potential it could stumble in year one and that it would take time to build a league. This happened with the USFL. Not a huge success in year one, built into years 2 and 3. until it imploded. So Vince McMahon was always on board with, even if year one was a total and utter failure, there was always year two. And he left that game. He signed off. He gave the championship trophy away, and he said on the broadcast, "We'll see you next year." Now, Matt, that game, the $1 Million Game, I know maybe I'm the only one who cares about TV ratings, but I think this is interesting. The $1 Million Game rated a 2.1, which is lower than any other network show for the week. Overall, viewers preferred 92 other programs to the XFL Championship, and it earned the 6th worst rating of the XFL season. Over the 12 weeks of the XFL season, they averaged a 3.1. Only the first 2 weeks hit the promised mark of 4.5. For comparison's sake, like I said, a 3.1 season average. The NFL averaged a 10.7 during the 2000 regular season and a 40.4 for the Super Bowl. Major League Baseball averaged a 2.6, and you got to remember most of those games are on in the daytime, and the World Series a 12.4. NBA averaged a 3.3, and that's mostly during weekend afternoons. Even the Stanley Cup Finals notched a 3.7. So it was even the ESPN coverage of the NFL draft, which by the way happened the same day as the $1 Million Game, etched a 2.65 and beat out the $1 Million Game. So, and I love this stat, which is the following week on April 28th, NBC aired the movie GoldenEye, Pierce Brosnan playing James Bond, in the same time slot as the XFL. It drew a 4.6 rating, over twice as much as the XFL.
Now, here's where I've got a beef, Sean.
Oh.
I've got a beef with the author of the Long Bomb on this.
Okay.
In the Long Bomb, now I don't have my copy in front of me because I'm a bad co-host, but in the copy of the Long Bomb, if you were to consult it, he describes the movie GoldenEye as a bad movie.
Oh, I've got the Matt. You want the quote? I'll give you the quote.
Tell me how he describes. He says it's Pierce Brosnan mailing it in his first performance as James Bond or something egregious like that.
Here's the
I don't
whole
know
paragraph.
what this guy is talking about, but he could not be more wrong.
On April 28th,
GoldenEye.
The week after the $1 Million Game, NBC aired something safe, the movie GoldenEye, quote, "A charmless James Bond rehash starring Pierce Brosnan." Appearing in the same Saturday night time slot as the XFL, GoldenEye drew a 4.6 ratings. This number would have guaranteed the league's success. How could the movie have done so well? Maybe people wanted to feel what it was like to punch in NBC's Saturday night on the remote, having avoided it for months.
That's what. Okay, yeah. He calls it those several that string of words right there. A charmless Bond rehash.
Well,
I thought GoldenEye was a great movie. Maybe it didn't help that I was of the age where James Bond appeals. I was like that young boy age, and it was one of the first Bond movies that I remember seeing.
I mean, I will say it's one of the better Pierce Brosnan ones for sure. Maybe the best Pierce Brosnan one.
In the grand scheme of Bonds, I actually, well, all right. If we're being completely honest here, I actually probably preferred The World Is Not Enough, maybe.
Which one was that?
That was Brosnan's third, I think. That was his third.
I confuse all of his so badly because they're really similar.
Also, they all have to do with an international terrorist.
Yeah, was that the one?
I mean, that's kind of all of Bond movies, to be fair.
Yeah, they blend together. What was the one with?
And the titles don't really help.
God, they're so generic.
They're like Harlan Coben novels. It's the title doesn't help at all. What ascertaining what the book is about or the movie's about.
Let's see here. GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies was the one.
That was one with the newspaper guy, the newspaper magnate, and
yes, Elliot Carver.
That one had probably the craziest premise. He's
it was bad.
He's some kind of media lord who's publishing news stories and causing wars to happen.
Who was not Hearst, but the other guy, the other famous public.
Oh, you're thinking of the yellow journalism.
Yes.
Pulitzer.
Pulitzer, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he wants to start a war, so everyone buys newspapers, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, so they would buy his news. Right, the war would drum up newspaper media consumption or something like that.
Oh, did you know Tomorrow Never Dies opened the exact same day as Titanic?
Oh, That's
Wikipedia
unfortunate
tells me that.
for Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, that's right. That had Terry Hatcher in it.
Terry Thatcher.
Terry Hatcher, sorry.
Oh, Terry Hatcher.
And then it was The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah, that's the one I was saying. I enjoy that more, but I can.
Was that the one with the helicopter with the
Probably.
saws on it, and then they go down the pipeline?
Yes, that's the one.
That was crazy.
That had to do with some kind of pipe. I like the twist in that one. That had a pretty good plot twist toward the end that I didn't see coming. Especially even for a Bond movie, it caught me off guard.
See, my favorite has to be Die Another Day. That movie is buck wild. Now, this is a movie.
Yeah.
Halle Berry.
Mm-hmm.
People changing their appearances through DNA restructuring. A Sunbeam satellite. Ice Palace invisible car. That movie is crazy.
So do you know the backstory to that movie?
No, what's the backstory?
So it was Pierce Brosnan's final performance as Bond, but it was also the 50th anniversary of the Bond franchise, something like that. So the entire movie is essentially they wanted to see how many references, and they actually made if you go back and look at it, there are videos on YouTube that highlight it. They make distinct references to every single Bond movie up until that point.
Wow.
Like everything from the laser satellite in space to the Aston Martin coming back to the Ice Palace. All of them have their place in previous Bond movies.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, either it's a concept that they borrowed, a character, or a reference, or a direct object like the Aston Martin coming back. It's it's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that when I saw it, but I appreciated I appreciate the movie much more knowing that it's basically a giant homage to the franchise itself. It's also the last movie they made before the giant reboot with Daniel Craig. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Which Casino Royale is, I think, I really liked Casino Royale.
It's got its moments. I think the ending, I didn't like the ending. I thought the first 2/3 were really good. And it didn't stick the landing for me.
Well, I just liked the introduction, and it was one of the few James Bond movies that I think was extremely true to the book.
Yeah. God, we should do a whole Bond series, shouldn't we?
We absolutely should.
I have not seen, shame on me, I have not seen any of the Sean Connery, Roger Moore. I have not seen any of those.
None of them?
Not a one. Nothing before Brosnan.
None of them.
Not what I don't watch a lot of movies. But we can change that.
Yeah, I think we might have to do something about that.
Our next Up for Debate presents.
And I think somebody might have to watch them and post on Twitter.
Live tweet the entire James Bond.
Yeah, somebody.
Do you know how many of those there are?
Yeah. Yeah, but what I'm hearing is a staycation is in order.
There are
I think
26 movies, Matt.
You need to like find some time where you could take off from work for like a month. No, maybe, I mean, you could probably get it done honestly in 2 weeks. Like you wouldn't even need that much time. Like a week should do it. And if you were just watched one every day. I think there's like 23, something like that, movies. I don't know. 2 weeks.
Oh my God, Matt,
you knock it out
so
in 2
many.
weeks.
There's so many. There are 2 Casino Royales.
Oh.
This is crazy. Okay, anyway, we're a bit off topic here. And in case you didn't notice out there, we're done with the XFL for tonight because we've concluded the XFL. Next week, we're going to talk about how the XFL actually folded. It's a very short conversation. We're going to start with it next week, including Vince McMahon's attempt to find another network after NBC and what was the ultimate final nail in the coffin for the XFL. Then we're going to spend the rest of the episode doing full-bore analysis. We're going to break down what did and didn't work in the XFL, what we're looking forward to with the AAF and XFL 2020, and if we think a second football league, a spring football league, could work, and if it did, what it would be like. And Matt, I think that's going to be a really awesome episode. A great discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've got some big, bold ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I've already started making my list. Checking it twice.
I was about to say, check that list twice. We appreciate everyone out there joining us for this XFL adventure. Hopefully you're having much fun as we are. If you would like more Up for Debate, if you want to check out the past episodes of this series, or even if you're just sick of XFL and want to listen to us talk about a bunch of other crap, you can do it on our website, upfordebate.tv. Click the archive button. You'll get our entire past listing. You can also get this show wherever you get podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Stitcher, now on Spotify, which is very exciting. The whole archive is there. You can check it out. You can also watch the video version on YouTube. Also, make sure you get in contact with us. We want to hear your thoughts. If you're a big fan of the XFL or a big fan of the series, or you just want to brag that you're an extreme fan and your team remains the champion, you can do so at upfordebatetv@gmail.com or tweet at us at upfordebatetv on Twitter. Matt, that is going to do it for tonight. We're going to wrap it up here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time for more XFL action here on Up for Debate.